On the last podcast, we was telling y'all how horrible it is. And now we're like, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. That's the true life of an entrepreneur.
And to piggyback off of that, how you say you're just sharing your stories. So how do you guys go about planning your episodes? Have you guys ever turned down a participant?
Yes. Welcome to the Nurse Boss Shift. It's your girl, Dr. Kiiyonna Jones.
And I'm Christal P, the hormone NP.
And we have a special guest that you might have seen on the last podcast. If you've listened to our last one, we had our special guest, Dr. Chakika Williams. Now she is our special co-host.
Yay.
Dr. Williams, welcome. Yes, Dr. Keke Da NP. Welcome. So we're going to do something different, you guys. We are encroaching up on our official 2-year anniversary, where Christal and I had a conversation over the phone and said, let's do a podcast. And it's really been a serious road for us. And I thought it would be good to have us be interviewed so that we can share with you guys our journey and how we got here and what has been our challenges, where do we see ourselves going, or whatever other questions Dr. Williams has for us. So she is going to be our co-host today.
I get to host.
Take it away.
Yes.
So I have some questions here. And I'm sure people that are listening who are in a position or in a space where they want to step out on faith like you guys did and start a podcast pretty much enjoyed this episode. So my first question is, what inspired you, besides getting on the phone and saying, let's start a podcast, to start your podcast?
I'll start because I actually reached out to Christal and I was like, we were already in business doing our IV hydration business. And I was like, Chris, one thing I love about Christal, let me just say this real quick. This is why she's my business bestie, because literally I could be like, let's do this. And she'd be like, okay.
And then she'll be like, whose idea was this? I'm like, yours.
Right, because I get overwhelmed. But she's always like down to try stuff. And I'm a dreamer. A lot of people may not know this, but I'm a big dreamer. I'm always thinking about ideas, and the problem is I don't want to execute. I want to dream, but I don't want to do the work. And then I'd be like, oh, why did I do this? This is stupid, right? And so I reached out to Christal and I was like, what's up with a podcast? And she was like, okay. And what happened was I had actually was interviewed on someone else's podcast. I was a part of a mentorship. She reached out. She was like, I would love to interview. So I interviewed, and I was like asking her questions. I'm like, so who helped you with this? How did you? And so she gave me the information and I was like, okay, Christal, I found this company. They will help us, because y'all know we talk about mentorship on here a lot, but we really do live it. So I found a company that helps launch podcasts. So Christal and I attended a discovery call with them. We talked about it, and the rest was history. We paid them a lot to help them.
You have to pay. You have to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to pay to play.
Right.
So the title, the name, the Nurse Boss Shift.
What'd you think about that name?
Yeah.
I like it, but how did you come up with it?
Again,
Same company.
It was me on a call. Chris, they gave us, so we paid this company. And they gave us this whole doc, right?
Yes.
And Christal and I, of course, we procrastinated.
Exactly.
And it was last minute. They was like, if y'all don't do it, we're going to start charging y'all butts more. So we were I remember it was a Saturday, and we were trying to come up with a name. And I said the Nurse Boss Shift, and I liked it because it was a play on words.
Yes.
And nurses would get it. And that's kind of how Christal was like, sounds good to me.
Right. Because it was a play on shifting the mindset.
Yeah.
And also we know about
Nurses were
shifts.
Yeah. So that's how we came up with the name. That's a good
And I just want to say, for the inspiration as well for creating the podcast for me was I listened to one of my favorite podcasts, Side Hustle Pro, and she had interviewed a lot of nurse entrepreneurs. She had interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs and how they got started and how they turned their side hustle into their main hustle. So I thought it would be perfect to do the same, but for nurses. So, because I was able to see myself in the guest she had, but even more specifically as a nurse doing it. I thought that would be very powerful.
To piggyback off of that, so was it just like a no-brainer to just target the nurse community?
Yeah, definitely. And because we were doing the training, also too, we always say, because we found this side of nursing and it allows us freedom and to be able to leverage our license, we want to tell everybody, because it's like, oh, did you know that nurses are out here doing it? So it was one of those things of being able to share to more people, to more nurses, to let them know that they can do this as well.
Yeah. And I feel, let me just add to that too, because on the last podcast, we was telling y'all how horrible it is. And now we're like, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. That's the true life of an entrepreneur. I promise y'all. It is. Y'all think we're not crazy.
Right.
There is the good and there is the not so good. And that's one thing I love about what we do. It's because we're not like, it's all roses and flowers. And we're like, y'all, it's hard. And we really share
transparency.
We're transparent, and we share our journey, like when we're hitting it hard or when we're like on an up, like that's what we wanted. Because I feel like a lot of these, and I don't want to say they're nurses per se, but like a lot of these companies and these mentors, they're out here just making it like it's all beautiful. And we felt like that was a huge gap that we wanted to fill, especially for nurses, so they can get an honest opinion on this journey and what it's like.
And to piggyback off of that, how you say, just sharing your stories. So how do you guys go about planning your episodes?
The company that we worked with, who helped us launch, told us, like, they pretty much watched our episodes and they helped us. They were like, Kiiyonna, you asked, I'm a talkative one. Christal asked great follow-up questions. So like lean into that. And so that's kind of how we have our own little way where like, I know if Christal wants to say something, or sometimes we've had episodes where I really didn't have a question and she didn't either. So we looking at each other like, we got to say. We have I think we just have that body language where I know when Christal wants to say something and she knows when I want to say something, and like we kind of just use it to our advantage. Again, it's been 2 years now, so we kind of got it. We've fumbled over a lot of
times,
but we figured it out.
And we think about episode ideas all the time. So we'll send them, have a list. We always talk about our assistants, our virtual assistants, our team members. So she helps us create episodes. She's always looking for things. And then the other part is just centered around finding dope nurse entrepreneurs, as we always say.
Next question.
Yeah. So a lot of outreach, or I'll send it to the team like, hey, I think she would be great. And they'll reach out. So it's a lot of that. And there's a lot of nurses out here doing amazing things. So we try to, because we do med spa IV hydration. So we try to find.
Nurses are amazing.
They are.
Yes,
they are. So we try to really find nurses doing things that are way outside of the box. Those are our favorite that we love, because then again, it just gives nurses other ideas that they can start their business on.
Have you guys ever turned down a participant?
Yes. That is a good question, girl.
And look, that ain't from
Right.
me.
That ain't your best friend.
So yes, like, what's your qualifiers for who can actually come on and who you decide not to interview?
This is from experience. We really try to be intentional with serving our market. And I always talk about service. Like, that's my biggest thing. And that's first. Before money, before anything. So if we don't feel like they can add value, or that our listeners will be able to somehow relate or take something away, we don't work with them. Or if we don't like them, not for us. Not really, but if we're like, I don't really rock with their brand, like, or I don't feel like they have the authenticity that we want. Because when people come on here, we have a conversation. It's the girlfriend conversation. Right. And we have had some people on the podcast where we were like, that didn't hit.
Yeah. Right.
And so then we follow up with our team and like, hey, make sure this, that, and this. And like, we didn't know, right? So sometimes we've had people on that weren't the best guests, but that helped us, just like with business, know what not to do.
Yeah.
And so we'll say, okay, make sure that they're not like this, or that they talk about this, or that they have this type of following, because it won't resonate. It won't hit with our people.
So you still played the episode though?
The one that was bad? Heck yeah, girl. That was money.
That was views.
So no, we still did bring them on, but it was a lesson.
Yeah.
And so speaking of YouTube and social media, how do you go about growing the audience? Because I mean, to have a podcast, you got to have somebody with some listeners.
Yeah.
So
we're looking currently into, that is our next step. So you go in phases with business. So you can't go in getting everything right? So we have to focus on one part, especially being new. So we have to focus on learning about podcasting. And then next was getting our schedules in order because we'd be recording at 10 p.m. or,
our kids in the background,
or we needed to record and we didn't. So getting our schedule and getting a rotation took a while. Yeah. And then now it's like, okay, we have everything set. We have a team, a process in place. So now let's focus on growing the podcast. So looking into people to help us with marketing. And then marketing, and then also getting brands in here to monetize the podcast. So Christal and I understood, this is a lesson for everyone, you guys. We understood because we had already been in business before that this was a long game. So we were not expecting to come out the gate and like, oh God, we need to make some money. We just wanted to be consistent. Our first year, we were inconsistent. Like we were just treating it like it was nothing. It was just kind of an extra thing to do, which was not good. And then the second year, like we planned last year about November, December, we had our meeting to prepare for the next year. And we were like, we got to do better. And we have to batch create our content. We need to get on the road, have spaces like this where we could rent a space and like host it. Like we really got serious and we invested money into like creating these type of spaces. So that is what I think a lot of new novice entrepreneurs do. They start in any business and they looking to make money right away. Most of the time, your value is from the lessons, the L's that you're taking in the beginning. So we already knew that. So we were just like, okay, we pay attention. And then we hired a solid assistant who has been with us basically from the beginning. So she knows our podcast. She knows our IV hydration training like the back of her hand. So having someone on your team who really, really can be you in place of you, maybe 80% of you is still a win. Helped us a lot.
So what are some challenges you can probably top 3 or 5 that you feel like you guys have faced along the way that someone that's a novice podcast can potentially try to avoid?
Yeah.
I would definitely say the planning in the beginning to be consistent, because they say that the average podcast doesn't last very long. I think even past 10 episodes, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's because you can get burnt out and it seems like a lot. So batch recording has helped. So I would say getting a schedule together or a consistent flow so you can be consistent, because we found out that that is the main thing with podcasts is you have to be consistent. So I think getting that schedule in order. 2, having a team, especially if you're busy. So you have to get a team to help you do all the things. And the team doesn't have to. We started the podcast with the grand team, but that's because we needed to learn what we needed. So you can always take that and then find your own team outside of that. So I think that did help.
I would add to, for number 3, definitely being able to identify the needs of your market is so important.
It's very important.
So we hear from people and, the listeners, and they're like, oh my God, that one was so good. This one was, and, or we look at our views, our viewership on YouTube or our listeners, and we actually have met with our team and like, okay, how many downloads? Why was this one working? Why was this one not? Like really getting deep on the metrics of your podcast is something that is extremely important. You don't have to have all of them, but like the basics, right? Because you want to know like what people want to hear, what people like. I definitely would go with that. And then I think another challenge that we had is like, I don't know if y'all know this, but some of our audio be trash. But here's the thing.
They might not even notice.
Here's the thing, y'all. We don't care because we are adding value,
right.
And ultimately,
don't get it or not.
That's what we focus on. Yes, we could do better with our audio. Like we're in the studio here,
but not to mention we have the microphone sitting in a box.
Yes, which was going to bring me to number 5, the tech.
Attention, aspiring entrepreneurs in the healthcare industry. Have you ever dreamt of starting your own successful IV hydration business? Well, your dream is about to become a reality. Imagine a business where you can make a difference in people's lives while building a thriving venture. We're excited to invite you to a free webinar that will unlock the secrets to launching a successful IV hydration business. Join us for an exclusive event where industry experts will share invaluable insight on the essential steps to launch your IV hydration business, building a 6-figure business from scratch, navigating the challenges in the healthcare entrepreneurship journey. But that's not all. Attendees of the webinar will get a sneak peek into our comprehensive IV Hydration On Demand course. Discover how this course has empowered others just like you to turn their passion into profit. Picture this: lifetime access to in-depth video trainings, business strategies, SOPs, and exclusive bonuses that can catapult your success.
Register now for our free webinar at https://apply.trueusavvy. That's truusavvy.com/training. Don't miss this opportunity to kickstart your journey to a rewarding and lucrative IV hydration business.
Do not allow tech to be, and our challenge is tech. Christal and I are both like, literally, you guys, Christal ordered the boom, got 2 mics, and they are sitting there not being used because we don't know how to use them. So we did not allow tech, though, although a challenge, to stop us because we have a message to deliver and we have people to help, and nurses in particular who work, in my opinion, I'm biased, but the hardest than most professions. And we want them to know what's possible. So do we not move forward because we don't have the tech people, because we don't have the this? Or do we bring somebody, pay for it, do whatever we have to do because we want to focus on our message, which is the most important part of this podcast?
Take me back to your number 3, right? Assessing your metrics, seeing what's working, seeing what's hitting, what was popular. So what would you say the key elements are to making a unique and memorable podcast?
I definitely would say authenticity for us. Like, which could not be, arguably somebody could say it's not a good thing that we don't prepare as much as we should. But even when we were talking before the other podcast with you on, and I was saying like, okay, stop. Like, we don't need to talk about it because I like it to be authentic. And so that, and then having someone on who is different, like someone who so for example, Tiff, her telehealthpreneur, I was looking at our YouTube channel and it really scored well. We had the Foot Institute. Like, she really did good because it was like they were relatable. The conversation was like a sister conversation. We know Tiff for a long time. So you could feel the energy. Yeah. Now, I will say our worst ones, I won't say which ones, but I will say what was missing was the connection. They were usually on the digital platform, so they weren't in person. That's another key, is in person too. They weren't in person, and they were talking about, especially on YouTube, how the appearance, like, so maybe this particular, and I say maybe, but I mean, really, this is what happened. This particular person just didn't like comb their hair. Like, they just kind of showed up and we were just like, oh, and they were like in a dark place. And we were like, okay, we didn't think this one through. So those are the things that we
they didn't think it through.
Right. They didn't think it through. We didn't give them, but we should have gave them, we could have gave them a checklist. Like, hey, make sure you're in good lighting. Make sure you, so what happened after that episode?
But that's that lesson.
That's that L.
And I was going to say, because our podcast is so niche that we kind of got this part, but an important thing if you're thinking about starting a podcast is who you're speaking to. And you talked about that, but really making sure that you know your audience and that you are bringing them the information they want to hear, and not just starting a podcast about your random thoughts, because most likely no one's going to care. Now, sometimes that can hit depending on what your random thoughts are. I've heard when I went to that podcast summit, they talked about all these people having crazy, weird podcasts, but people listen, like about
super niche
noise or different things like that. So just make sure that you have an audience in mind and that you have value to bring them so that they will care and that they will listen. So that's what makes them.
And can I add something? We, without realizing, we had a pilot, and our pilot was our coaching program. I was already in the space. Christal was already in the space. So we knew that there was a market. So that's the difference too. So if you don't have a following already, or if you're not like in the digital spaces, make sure that you do that first before you like assume.
And I like how you just said, make sure that you have your audience. So that particular audience, that goes back to our previous episode when I was in the hot seat. Understanding who your ideal audience is, because if you guys were targeting everybody, you're targeting nobody. So how has the podcast changed or impacted your personal and professional lives?
I was just surprised at how many people like actually listen to it. It still is very humbling when like, even for my coaching program, not the one that Christal and I have together, but like people would reach out and be like, Dr. Jones, like that episode, I needed that. Thank you so much. Or my mentees who would be in my cohort would say like, oh, Dr. Jones, that last episode was amazing. It's like, oh, like this is really helping. So it makes you want to continue to show up, because keep in mind, everything that exists started with a thought, right? You started with an idea, and then you've taken that and grown it to something where it's actually helping people. So for me, that was like oh my gosh, like we are really doing what we said we wanted this podcast to do.
And the same when they tell us like they listen to us on the way to work and we inspire them. That's definitely the reason.
Humbling?
It's very humbling. And the reason
and we be feeling like we got to show up. Like, we can't miss Monday. They listening. They waiting.
Yeah, so it's definitely helped in that aspect. And then just more personally, just feeling like you're an expert at something. So that definitely feels good. Being someone that people tune into and listen and be an encouragement has definitely helped in the
And can I just add this little piece though? And it all was because we started doing something, whether Christal, whether it was you and I meeting at that networking event, or you sending me a DM, or you sending, I don't even know if you sent me a DM, but we met at a conference. But it all started. This could never have happened if none of that happened. Like if we didn't show up at that event, was far from you, far from me. Like if you didn't be willing to be a part of that conference, if I didn't be willing to be, like it all starts somewhere, you guys. Like, and this would not be if that didn't happen. So I want those people who are just thinking about starting a podcast or a business or whatever, understand every journey begins with the first step. And the truth of the matter is, especially as nurses, we like to know the whole Google map destination. And that's not how entrepreneurship works.
Nope, you just got to get started. So just two things. What are some resources you would recommend someone who is interested in resources like books or anything that they can start looking into for those that want to start their own podcast?
I don't have a book about podcasts, but I have a book about mindset. I have plenty of books about mindset. So we can start there. Rocket Fuel is one that I've recently read. So I'm going to talk about that one. That one is really about visionaries versus what's the second role? So it's the visionary and it's the person who executes, and really knowing the difference and what you are. And if you are thinking about doing something like a podcast, let's say put that in terms of a podcast, you have to think about the person who you would work with if you were going to have a co-host should complement you. They shouldn't be you. So two visionaries
can't work together.
It's going to be a problem. There's going to be a gap. There's going to be a gap. And it's called the integrator. I just remember. So you can't have two integrators either, because then nobody is dreaming, thinking, visualizing the direction of the company either. So the same thing is true with your podcast. So I like the two people podcast. Christal, because sometimes life happens. My dad recently passed. Christal stepped up. If something happened with her family, she's out of town on vacation, I step up. Like we are able to lean into each other versus like just doing it on our own. So for me, I definitely, Rocket Fuel would be one that I would recommend. What would be yours?
I don't have a book, but or just looking at free stuff that coaches have to get started, to see the basics that you need. There's a lot of YouTube videos about podcasting. So definitely just starting with that information and then finding someone that you like and then getting up under them to get the specifics.
And can I just add one more book too? And this one will be really kind of more specific to podcasting, which is Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley. He, as podcasters, that's what we're doing. Like we are trying to talk to nurses and nurse practitioners and other healthcare people about a thing, entrepreneurship, our main thing, why they should do it, what to expect, and what their journey would be. And in order to be a key person of influence, you have to be in their place, basically, and be willing to do the thing that you're telling them to do, which we always talk about, mentorship, reading, all the things. So that also is a great book to read.
And final thing, what final advice would you give to someone who is interested in starting a podcast but they're uncertain?
I would say to just do it. I had talks with several friends, of course, about doing podcasts over the years. Never happened. And then, Kiiyonna came to me and I'm like, okay, this will happen. But even them, they think, oh, I'm not a nurse. My friends think, my friend always says she's mad at me for not pushing her to go to nursing school when I went, because she could have been where I am now. And I'm like, do you realize this has nothing to do with nursing? Well, it has nothing to do with nursing. Like you can do it. I always talk about my friend, 4 kids, like running it, stay at home mom. I need those things because she always knows the events. How do you know those events? Start talking about it. Events around the city for moms. Yeah. I would tune into that because I need to know. I think that people think that they have nothing to offer. You have a lot to offer. Just find out whatever that niche is, hone in on that, and just start it. There's free apps. Just start talking. Yeah. That's how, people think, oh, well, you had a community. You just have to, you just have to start talking about the thing you like on your social and then move that over to a podcast.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, you guys don't have to know a lot about the operational part of a podcast anymore. Back in the day, they did. Like, they had to have a whole studio, setup, camera, all this audio. You don't. Like, literally, if you have an iPhone, you can start a podcast.
Tripod.
And a tripod. You can start a podcast. So I would challenge those who are thinking about it to not think about themselves, but think about the people they are serving. And if you have some, like, just think about what is the thing that people ask you all the time. And that's your podcast. Okay. And using that and your phone and your tripod and just start talking. And here's the thing. This is what Russell Brunson says. This is what Alex Hermosi says. You're going to start out bad.
Really bad. Do it ugly.
Really bad.
Get it out the way quicker.
And hurry up, because you won't have no listeners anyway at that time. So get the bad part out the way, but keep going. That's the advice that I would give. Like, you have something in you. I think the world would be a much better place if we all would focus on our gifts and put it out to the world to help the world.
And focus on the fact that, I mean, it's been mentioned, but the fact that there's people out there waiting for you to talk because they're searching for that answer.
I like that.
So
you don't want to, life is short. And the last thing you want to do is leave with your ideas with you and they're buried in the grave and no one ever got to experience it. So
absolutely.
I love your answers, lady.
This was good. It felt good. I got excited being interviewed.
Me too.
So listen, you guys, this is our second year. We have some great changes that's going to come up for next year, you guys. We committed, and I'm just so proud of us, Christal, because we committed to once a week this year. And even though sometimes I was by myself or Christal was by herself, we still showed up for you guys. And we really try to be an example of what is possible and how to really do things ugly, right? I feel like now in this third year, like, it's going to get prettier and prettier and prettier. But again, we did not start it that way. And so we really hope to inspire others. Like, I would love to hear somebody say, like, I started my podcast because I listened to the interview with Dr. Kiki and I decided to start, because that's the whole point. That's what we want. So you guys stay tuned. We have some great things coming up for next year. We are going to ideally have something exciting over the next couple of weeks also that we are going to announce, but none of this could happen if it was not for you guys doing, downloading, showing up, telling your friends, not gatekeeping, like we said. And we just want you to know that we really, really, truly appreciate you. And just to continue to be transparent is why we had Dr. Kiki interview us, because we know these will probably be questions that you guys will have. So hope it helped you guys.
Yes. And stay tuned on our 2-year anniversary, looking to do something special. So stay tuned for that. And then if you guys know, I think we've said this before, if you guys know if there's a dope nurse entrepreneur, if you are one listening, who has started something, please reach out to us so we can interview you and see what value you have to give to the community as well.
Yes. All right, you guys. You guys know we are on Spotify. We are on Apple. So any information that you need will be in the show notes, especially whatever we're going to do. We haven't officially made it official what we're going to do for our second year official anniversary, but whatever that is, it will be in the show notes. So make sure you there. And then also comment. Tell us, like, what other questions you guys would have. What would you like to see for next year? Like, what do you think is missing that you just really need? And then also, we're on YouTube. So make sure you are a subscriber on YouTube and that your notifications are turned on if you are watching this on YouTube. But as always, share, don't gatekeep. Until next time, you guys. Bye. Bye.